Missionary statesman Hudson Taylor had complete trust in God. He once wrote in his journal, "Our Heavenly Father is a very experienced one. God sustained 3 million Israelites in the wilderness for 40 years. Now, we don't expect God will send 3 million missionaries to China, but if God did, there would be ample means to sustain them all. Depend on it," he wrote. "God's work, done in God's way, will never lack God's supply." These are wise words for us to remember. God's work, done in God's way, will never lack God's supply. But do we really believe that? Do we really trust God's supply, God's generosity, God's abundance? This is the question before us this morning as we explore the 23rd Psalm. Yes, that beloved psalm that brings so much comfort, especially at times of death. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me." And it is a comforting text for those troubling, hard times. But I wonder, have you ever thought of this text as an everyday text? I mean, we all know how it goes, right? "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Yes, we all know the line. And yet right there in that first verse is a truth so hard to live by. I shall not want. I mean, we live in a culture of powerful wanting, don't we? I mean, our culture is one where consumer spending amounts to 70% of our gross domestic product. 70%. That means our culture is literally powered by our collective dining out and our grocery shopping and our occasional shopping sprees. And this works because, as Dr. David Lose puts it, we are encouraged at every turn to want. To want more stuff. To want nicer stuff. To want lots of stuff. We live, we are reminded, with an imagination dominated by the pervasive sense of scarcity. Far more aware of what we don't have, and therefore will go out and buy rather than what we do have. We're consumed by what we lack instead of being grateful for our abundance. But really, what do we expect in our consumer-based culture? One pastor illustrated this point by rewriting the 23rd Psalm as if consumerism were God. And I want to share it with you. It goes like this. "Consumerism is my shepherd. I shall always be in want. Shiny advertisements make me detest my inadequacies and lead me to envy those who have more. You empty my bank accounts, O greed, and guide me straight to the mall to spend beyond my means. Though I teeter on the brink in the shadow of financial ruin, I shall fear no creditors, because I can file Chapter 11. Then I can start to consume again, and this comforts me. You prepare a buffet before me so I can overeat and become ill," meaning a loss in productivity and higher medical bills. "Surely desire for money shall plague me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in my McMansion forever, or at least until foreclosure. Well, maybe it's a bit extreme, but it is a cautionary tale, isn't it? Because we have seen this, if not personally experienced this reality. But we don't have to accept it. We can reclaim our hope in the promises of God. We can let go of our want for more and instead count our blessings and celebrate enough. Psalm 23 reminds us in every verse of God's providence and provision for everything that we need in this life. Paraphrased in the hymn by Marty Haugen, we are invited to call out, "Shepherd us, O God, beyond our wants." God gives us meadows of faithfulness and love to rest in, and waters of peace to walk beside. God restores us, heals our weary souls, and leads us in right ways so that our spirits will sing the music of God's name. Though we wander the valley of death, the death of jobs or relationships or health or this earthly life, whatever valley we are in, we shall not fear, for God is there, comforting us and giving us hope. God's abundance has set a banquet of love before us in the face of hatred, in the face of greed, in the face of fear, and crowns us with love beyond our power to hold. This is God's abundance for the faithful. To believe every day that God's kindness and mercy will follow us right there on our tails, right here in our hearts, wherever we go. And when the time comes to pass, we will dwell in the house of God forever. I want you to notice how the shepherd provides for the sheep the basic needs of life. Food, as in green pastures. Drink in those still waters. And protection along those right paths. And again, in the second part of the psalm, the same is provided. Food as a table. Drink, my cup overflows. And protection, you anoint my head with oil. You see, the issue is life. As Dr. J. Chilton McCann highlights, in accordance with God's character, God wills and actively works for life. In contrast to us busy and industrious North Americans who are inclined to view life as an achievement. You know, we make a living, we say. Instead, Psalm 23 affirms that life is essentially a gift. And as such, the appropriate response is not greed or wanting, but rather infectious gratitude. Count your blessings is the theme for our fall stewardship campaign, but it's more than a 4-week exercise. You see, as Christians who trust in God's will and God's way, and who are witnesses of God's abundant supply, that abundance and generosity and providence becomes the theme for every single day of our life. But of course, we can't just say it here and expect it to stick. Not in a culture of 24/7 advertising. In a world that scares us to fear scarcity, we have to remind ourselves every single day that we have the blessing of God's abundance When I look around in this place, I see God's abundance everywhere. I see people who have volunteered to make meals for the homeless, or for college students, or for people who have been injured or sick. I see youth who have taken time out of their busy schedules to hold babies or play with children at Gaudenzia. I see advocates who care for the hungry and the impoverished and the fearful, the broken. I see Sunday school teachers who every week help teach the next generation to trust in God's providence and love and care for them. I see each and every person sitting here reminding me that we are part of a faith movement that will not accept the status quo of our culture, who are part of a tradition that still claims that God's grace and love changes everything. I wonder, what do you see? In this place, in your homes, in the community, where do you see God's abundance bursting at the seams? Well, over the next few weeks, we are inviting you to give thanks for God's blessings, to write them down on Post-it notes and to metaphorically nail them to the Reformation red door display in our Welcome Center. And I don't think it's going to be hard for us to cover those doors with 95 or more blessings in our lives. But I want to challenge you to something else this morning. I want to challenge you to read or recite the 23rd Psalm every day. And maybe just recite verse 1 whenever you're feeling like you want something. And just see if this practice doesn't help block out all those voices that try to rob us of our confidence in God's supply, or that try to identify us by what we are not. You see, when we realize how very blessed we are, we can live lives of confidence, courage, and generosity, knowing that the Lord is our shepherd and that we have been blessed to be a blessing. Thanks be to God. Amen.